Hello and welcome to this edition of Assembly Calendar. I'm Visscher. Our guest today is New York State Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis. Nicole represents the 64th Assembly District, which includes Staten Island and Brooklyn. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is the Assemblywoman's first Assembly Calendar taping for 2018. Nice to see you folks at home. And we're going to discuss with her the governor's budget proposal for the upcoming 2018 session and some of the other important topics of concern to herself and her constituents back home in her district. Nice to see you, Assemblywoman.
Great to be here.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
How are things going?
Well, you know, it's we got our gloves on, ready to fight another round here with the budget, and it's interesting because this year there's just a lot going on. You have congestion pricing, you have the MTA funding to fix what is now a crisis in New York City with our subway system, 70,000 delays a month. There's a lot of fighting between the city and state on who's going to fund that. The state has said we'll chip in, half of that money, and we're looking for the city to come up with the other half because this is a transportation network that is encompassed wholly within New York City, and they got to be responsible for that system that really without it, you're talking about a $4 billion loss according to our city controller's estimate in economic activity. So it's very important. That's also on the table. And then of course, with the federal tax plan that has been passed in Washington, the governor now is looking, he's really posturing politically, looking to blame more Washington, then look at New York's finances and say, hey, why are we such a high tax state? How do we cut some of that burden that we're placing on individuals? Instead, what we're hearing is he wants to add more taxes, over $1 billion in additional taxes, fees, and surcharges in his budget address, which there's going to be a lot of opposition to that, my opposition included, particularly with the proposal to add sales tax on all internet purchases. I mean, that's something that is very punitive, is going to hurt your average New Yorker that just looks to buy something online. We already have such a tax imposed if there's a store located in the state of New York. So then you'd have to pay that sales tax. But now to say on all internet purchases, that's something that I'm opposed to, and I'm sure many others within the Assembly and the Senate are as well.
So the governor was talking about essentially blaming Washington, as you mentioned, for what is estimated to be somewhere between a $4 and a $4.5 billion budget deficit shortfall that the state appears to be facing, although some question whether or not that actually exists at this point.
Yeah, our estimates are that actually we're getting more money in terms of income tax than we anticipated at the beginning of last year. I mean, the idea now that this tax plan has passed and it is causing us to have a deficit is not correct. I mean, matter of fact, what we're seeing is a lot of people selling, profiting from their investments. They're now capitalizing on it, and because of those capital gain taxes, we're going to actually see more tax revenue coming in than we had initially intended. But this goes back to the question then, well, you know what, if we are in any type of a deficit, and even if we're not in a deficit, why are we looking to constantly increase spending at ridiculous levels? If you look at it again this year, the governor came out with a proposal to give free tuition to illegal immigrants in our state, free tuition. So last year, for the last few years, we've had that battle on the floor for the DREAM Act, which would be tuition assistance for those who are in our country illegally. Now he's taking it to an all new level and saying he wants free tuition altogether. So, that is something that we believe is misguided spending. It's inappropriate to put that burden on the taxpayers of this state. And it's just another misguided proposal by the governor. He wants to offer free bail. What is the incentive to return to court if you don't have to pay any bail? That's going to be another big debate this year. So all these things, we have to understand that nothing in life is free. Somebody pays for it. And my constituents are tired of paying for these proposals that are really backwards.
And some would argue that during that, both the State of the State and, or more so the State of the State address, that it was a public campaign platform that he has aspirations for higher office.
Well, he obviously wanted to set himself against Donald Trump, and a lot of this, both the State of the State and the budget address was, blaming Washington for all the woes of New York. And as an executive of the state of New York, you got to take responsibility for the spending in this state, for the taxation in this state. And if we're not faring as well as the other states in terms of getting an economic boon out of this new plan that has been passed in Washington, it's our own fault. And in fact, there's a couple of tweaks that we need to make in the state law, to actually help New York so they're not penalized because of what happened in Washington. And so that's not Washington's fault, that's our fault, because we need to fix our system, our tax code, and we need to also look for ways to lessen the burden on our businesses and residents in the state, because they're going to leave to other less tax states across the country.
If you listen to the President's State of the State of the Union address, which aired during the week of this taping, he very much talked about a focus on small businesses, tax cuts for small businesses. Yet in New York, we seem to be heading in the opposite direction.
Well, I think that the governor has spent a tremendous amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on TV ads to promote New York as open for business, New York as a tourism destination, and yet we don't see the actual benefits to the local economy. I mean, so if you go to upstate New York, which I have traveled to recently, you will see that it is really depressed. Areas like Utica, New York, for example, all those small businesses have left. The population has decreased tremendously. Whatever they have now are big box stores and chains. And so that's a real direct impact of bad policies at the state level. In New York City, where I'm from, you drive down Manhattan and Broadway, you drive down Fifth Avenue, you see empty storefronts. I mean, it just in the Greenwich Village, Union Square area, you will see maybe 2 empty storefronts per block if you travel along Broadway. It's pretty.
That's pretty telling, given that's the largest city.
Yeah, and yet the mayor and the governor continue to try to push policies and implement new mandates that continue to burden these small businesses, whether it be predictive scheduling, whether it be other minimum wage increases, whether it be any type of other mandates. And the issue is, look, we want people to have good wages, but you can't you can't create a false economy out there. And if the economy doesn't support it, what you're going to see is people closing up shop and leaving. And a matter of fact, if now you go to Dunkin' Donuts, you're ordering now from an app. You're not even ordering from an individual. If you go on the thruway at one of the rest areas, you'll see that now you're ordering from the McDonald's from a kiosk. You go to CVS, you're scanning your own items. There's nobody there doing it for you anymore at the register. These are the real realities as technology advances, that people are going to be replaced with technology. So we need to understand that the thing is not, we have to try to get people off of minimum wage. Minimum wage is supposed to be entry level. I worked minimum wage my first 2 jobs when I was both in high school and in college, and gave me the experience, good customer service experience, good experience working with people. But we have to help people get off of minimum wage, and a big part of that is vocational training, which I was very happy that the president discussed in his State of the Union, because that to me has been a priority of mine. I discussed it during the campaign trail when I was running for mayor. I talk about it up here in Albany. Vocational training, giving people a skill so they can have a career, they can start a business. That's what we need to be doing more of to get people independence, to help them support their families in a city and a state that is increasingly becoming more unaffordable.
And the vocational training, because let's face it, not everyone is book smart or wants to go to college. So that vocational training provides an alternative.
Absolutely. Look, not everyone is fit to go to college. Some students love working with their hands. Some love to take apart computers and put it back together. Some more like working on automobiles. We shouldn't be discouraging people from that. We need mechanics, we need painters, we need welders, we need engineers of all types. And so I believe that, especially when we're looking at how college loan debt and, advanced degrees are becoming more expensive, some people may opt to start their own business instead with a skill something that they're good at. And that's fine. We should encourage that. And so I really think that is something that we need to do if we're going to continue to try to bring manufacturing to our state. I mean, that was another big point that the president talked about. He's increasing manufacturing jobs, and the only way we're going to do that is if we're competitive with taxation, and also by having a workforce that is skilled to be able to do those things.
So the governor, in an effort to close this estimated $4.5 billion shortfall, is proposing close to $1 billion in additional taxes and fees. One of his proposals, I believe, he's talking about possibly tolling New York City roadways.
Well, I mean, it's one of his ideas, not fully fleshed out yet. There's still a lot of questions, and that this has been a debate going on for a while now. As a representative of Staten Island and Brooklyn, I'm concerned about the tolling already that we have, particularly in the Verrazano Bridge toll. Sam Schwartz's plan, the Move New York plan, is, I think, a good starting point for negotiation if we can get it, because that would lower the Verrazano Bridge toll for both Staten Island and Brooklyn residents, and actually for everybody. And it would really spread out the burden of tolling throughout the city, but also with an understanding that those transportation-starved communities, like the one I represent, will have more transit capital dollars coming to expand their transportation options. So we've been pushing for a long time on Staten Island for the North Shore Bus Rapid Transit, for the West Shore Rail. This would be a revenue stream for those projects. I haven't signed on to the legislation for the Move New York plan, which is Sam Schwartz's plan, yet, because I want to see commitments. I need a commitment on caps on tolls. I don't want to be in a situation where we're all of a sudden seeing all $16 tolls around the city. They need to be capped at an affordable rate equivalent to perhaps the ride of a subway. And we need to also have commitments for these projects that are going to fund those areas in the city that are transportation deserts, as we like to call them. And it's very unfortunate, but if we really want to get people out of their cars and deal with the issue of congestion, you got to give them an alternative. South Shore Ferry on Staten Island is something we've been advocating for. Again, with the North Shore Bus Rapid Transit, the West Shore Rail, that's now a plan that I think many Staten Islanders would be supportive of. But until we see those commitments, that's what we're going to be funding with the revenue, I don't know that I am ready to support such a plan.
So with about a minute and a half left to go of the show, this taping is in January. Over the next couple of months, obviously the focus is going to be on that budget shortfall. But what are some of the other pressing issues that come to mind that the legislature will be addressing before April, do you think?
Well, one of the big issues at the public protection hearing yesterday was the issue of the opioid epidemic, needing to put hardened drug dealers behind bars, not mixing them with first-time offenders who are addicts, and they're committing, let's say, a larceny or a theft to feed their habit. If there's a difference between an individual who's a first-time offender who commits a crime to feed their habit and a person who's out there selling drugs over and over again, multiple felony drug convictions, preying on our children and our most vulnerable. We need to differentiate that. I have legislation that would do that. We don't put hardened drug dealers with first-time offenders, addicts, in drug treatment. We need to clarify that loophole in the law. Also, mental health court, we need to deal with that because we have too many individuals who are getting out on the street and not because they weren't sent for treatment. If they're arrested and we know that they have a mental illness, we need to give them treatment. We need to utilize Kendra's law to get them outpatient treatment and not just allow them to go back on the street, because it's a public safety issue, both for them, for the people in the public. We've seen too many incidents in the New York City area of individuals who have 20, 30, 40 prior arrests, and they were small crimes, but then all of a sudden a murder has taken place, and that includes the loss of police officer Familia, who was killed by someone who was schizophrenic and had gone untreated.
Nice to see you, Assemblywoman. Thank you very much for joining us today for this edition of Assembly Calendar. If you'd like to reach out to the Assemblywoman, she is available on social media, Facebook and Instagram. You can contact her there as well. Thank you very much for joining us today for this edition of Assembly Calendar. Until next time.